Welcome to Playfully Orange, our conversation about arts and culture here in Central Florida. My guest today is Pam Schwartz. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
And Pam, tell us your current position.
I am the executive director of the Orange County Regional History Center and the Historical Society of Central Florida in downtown Orlando.
All right. So let's go back to how you got into this museum business.
Sure.
You came from Iowa?
Iowa, yes. Eastern Iowa, a small little town. I actually kind of started in museums by total accident. My school bus driver, of all people, asked me to work on a mural with him for our school board meeting room. He was my bus driver, but also this incredible artist and carpenter. And he'd handmade all these beautiful signs around our community, and I'd had no idea. And he knew I was an avid art student. And so he asked if I wanted to work on it. And it was just this incredible experience. And as part of that process, he'd asked me to go down to our local historical society in Jackson County, Iowa, and research some historic photos of our community. And I just became enamored. I was like, this can't be my town. This isn't this place I'm growing up. Because, I don't think any kid thinks the place they're growing up is super cool. But I just loved it. And I kept asking stories. I'm like, where was this? And they're like, here. But where was this? Here. They're like, I don't think you're getting, like, these pictures are all from here. And so the director at the time said, I was a freshman in high school, and she said, do you want to work here on the weekends? And I said, yeah. And so I've just been in museums ever since. So for 21 years now.
Did that take you then to museum studies as far as a degree?
Well, no. I worked in that museum for 4 years while I was in high school. I did a lot of other things, the library, after school programs. Always been very busy. But I went to school at Drake University as a music major for a while. I have bass trombone. And so I'm also in music. And I thought I was going to do that. I wanted to maybe run an orchestra. I didn't want to play. I wasn't a virtuoso by any means. But I really thought it could be fun to be like a coordinator. So I went into music business and very quickly was like, nope. And I transferred to University of Northern Iowa, and I had to do an interview with somebody on campus for one of my classes. And I went to the local museum, the university museum, and interviewed one of the staff. And she goes, we have internships here if you've got background in museums. And I'm like, duh. Why wouldn't I just be doing that? I guess even though I'd worked in one, I hadn't thought of it as a career. And so I kind of took a little bit of a little brief semester long or so hiatus, and then started in museums and got my undergraduates actually in communications, but then I did go to get my master's in museum professions from Seton Hall University. So, and then have been everywhere from a one-room schoolhouse in Maine on up to the British Museum in London, and have been here at the History Center coming up on 7 years in February.
Well, what brought you to Orlando in Central Florida?
My partner actually had gotten a position with the Orlando Sentinel from where we were at in Iowa. And so I had started looking, and this opportunity came up to be here as the chief curator and essentially look at redesigning the entire History Center's exhibitions. And so I came here. It was a really good opportunity to kind of, in a way, think about starting from scratch and rebuilding. And what I found was that we needed to really sort of step back and look at who we were as an institution. And so all of this really incredible staff, this really amazing people we have working over here have done just that. We've really stepped back and we've started to look at building our collection in a way that's more reflective of our entire community's experience. And so we've spent 5 or 6 years really doing that. And now we're just starting to eke towards the next big best steps for the sort of next version of the History Center and how we serve our community. So, and I became the director in January of 2021, I think.
Well, a recent exhibition was about the history of music, rock music in Central Florida. So your music background, you got a little bit of both there going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also was impressed with an exhibition about the Ocoee massacres, which seems like a very important exhibition. And I know you did a lot of work on that.
Yeah, certainly. We've done a lot of research the last 5 or 6 years. Like I said, we've told a really great story of Orange County and the whole Central Florida region, because the History Center actually looks at Orange County and each of the 6 counties that touch it, and 14,000 years. So there's a lot of stories to tell across that time. But we really, again, looked at making sure that our collection and our storytelling reflects everybody in our community. And that's been a big emphasis. And so, we respond to things when they happen, like the Pulse nightclub shooting. challenging, and we collected after that. The Ocoee massacre happened 100 years ago. We're very past needing to talk about that event. And so we did a lot of research and looked at dealing. We actually ended up connecting with about 76 descendants who were impacted by that event, and were able to give them parts of their own history through, their own oral history, researching land deeds, telling them where their, grandparents or great grandparents' land might have been. But we've also done, really happy stuff too, like our Mythic Creatures exhibit and the current figurehead exhibit, which is all about the, 80s, 90s, early 2000 music scene here. So we do a wide, vast array of history, from everything that's a little challenging on up to things that are really exciting and fun, because it is all history and it's all part of Central Florida's story. So it's fun because we're kind of getting to work on a little something different all the time.
Like your impressions of your little hometown, what history do we have? Many people would say, what history does Orlando have?
Yeah.
But you're saying there's a lot?
There's so much. Our building here in downtown, like I said, is 7 counties and 14,000 years. And we barely get to scratch the surface with the exhibitions that we do. So we actually supplement those. If we have our exhibits each year, we also do a ton of programming. We write monthly articles for the community paper. We do a ton of things. Follow us on our social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, because we're always posting really interesting little bits and pieces of history. There's so much here that people don't realize. I mean, I'm still learning, obviously, every day. It's a lot to absorb in just 6 or 7 years. There's so much history, and there's so many unique stories. And we're just excited to keep kind of scratching the surface and uncovering each of those. And we do, a lot of the work with the community. We rely on our community to sort of inform us. What is the history here? What is your history here? And how does that storytelling sort of play in? And so we do oral history interviews. We collect donations from various community members who've maybe been here a few years and maybe been here for several generations. So there's a lot of stories to tell, and I know that you do so much good work in that, and we kind of work together through some of that as well, and making sure that people recognize that their lived experiences are the history of this community, and it might not seem like it today, but it will in 20 years or 50 years.
In those 6 or 7 counties, there are a number of smaller historical societies or museums. How do you work with them or not, and how does that feed into our greater understanding of our story?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it sort of depends on the institution. We have lots of historical societies. We've got some museums. We've got arts and culture centers. So there's a lot of different styles of institutions, and we all really just try to work together. I think that those are bonds that we're continuing to form. We had done a lot of really great, meetings pre-COVID, with all of these institutions sort of coming together to discuss the history, to also share in programming and marketing and looking at ways we can work together. So we actually have just been having a few conversations about revitalizing that sort of community cohort, I guess you could call it, because, we're all angling towards the same goal, which is education, enlightenment about our history, entertainment is a lot of what we do as well. So we, try to work together in those ways, but we also try to help with collecting. If there's items that maybe they don't have the resources to collect, we may do it. If there's an item that we have duplicates of, we might share with them. But we also, have done different workshops with some of the staff at those institutions and vice versa. So we're constantly trying to find different unique ways to lift each other up and work together to just, share all the really interesting history and culture in the region.
And how does our community of museums compare to London, Maine, other places you've been? What can we learn, or what can we be most proud of?
I think every area and every region is unique in many ways, but also similar. Almost always are there different scales of institutions, whether there be a big museum and lots of smaller museums, medium-sized museums. I think like many communities, we have our, your biggest history center, your science museum, your art museum. And then you've got a lot of smaller museums who have, some sort of more specific type of either programming or art that they cover or something like that. In our case for history, it's, the specific community's history, whereas we're on a broader region. And so think of it on sort of different micro and macro levels of storytelling. And I think it's that way, really everywhere. But we really do try to work together. I don't know that all communities work together together very well. And I'm not sure that our community has always done that historically either. I think we're all still learning how to not be competitive in a space where we are looking for patrons and members and donors. And so I think that that's a really exciting thing for all of us as we, have a lunch here, or we meet together through great organizations like United Arts that give us an opportunity to have a forum together to keep figuring out different ways that we can leverage one another and build a very strong community, because it's not competitive, right? We're all here to just make a better place to live. So finding different and collaborative and unique ways to do that, we're always open to suggestions as well. So
some of the larger institutions like the British Museum in the world are dealing with some controversy about the ownership of some of their artifacts, and should they be owning them, or how were they gathered? Do we have any controversial artifacts in our Orange County Regional History Center collection?
Not to my knowledge. That doesn't mean, there have been different institutions, open a box and discover human remains they didn't know were there. As far as institutions go, we're not hundreds and hundreds of years old. We've got our deepest roots back into around the 1940s with some small displays that started here in a former courthouse, and we're now in the courthouse. But I think we've not had collections quite like that, like you might see in natural history museums or art museums even. History tends to, I don't know, not have as many provenance issues than the ethnographic, the anthropological type things. So, we have some of those items certainly, but we try to be very careful about paperwork. And certainly if we ever found those in our collection, we take care of them as we should right away. So, it's a changing thing. Things used to be done differently, and that's not an excuse. It's just all the more reason to continue to look at our practices and improve them and find ways to make sure that we're doing the right things by society today, because we can't just use the veil of back then as an approval.
We haven't had a lot of Orange County troops off around the world looting and conquering. So
yeah, well, and it tended to be really well funded museums, and a lot of times it happened more in academia. And our institution, even though we kind of really began in the 70s, has always been more local historical based, as opposed to like you said, going out on we weren't going out on archaeological digs and things in different countries. So the way we were founded was a little different than some of those American and or European mega institutions, if you will.
Yeah. Well, Pam, thank you for talking with us today. Thank you for bringing all your expertise here to Central Florida, and your energy and enthusiasm and passion and knowledge to the Orange County Regional History Center, and helping us preserve and discover and explore our story.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all that you do in the community as well.
And thank you for watching this issue of Playfully Orange. Thanks. Bye.